Good morning, students. Once again, we are with this class, and nowadays we are taking our unit third. This unit is about technology. In this section, we have discussed website design. We will have one more class on this subject. Another part in this unit is grammar and composition. In this class, we will have an introductory discussion about grammar. We all know what grammar is. Grammar is set of rules which are observed and practiced to make the correct use of a language. And actually, this is the code. Grammar is the code which is shared by all the members of the group. The group here means people who are using that particular language. They all know this code system, and this is how they are able to understand the spoken or written form of the language. So, if we understand the grammar of English language, then we will be able to understand anything spoken or written in English. That is the general introduction. For our level, what grammar is, what are the works of grammar, and whether grammar is there may be a case of good grammar or bad grammar. Is there any difference in grammar of prose or poetry or speech or written form of language? These are the topics we will discuss in our this section. So first of all, let's start. So we may say that it is very difficult to define grammar. We can give a definition of grammar, but on further discussion we will find that the definition is not sufficient. We need something else. It is difficult to say which came earlier, the language or the grammar. But common sense leads one to conclude that those who tried to study language must have arrived at some sort of grammar of language. We may say that first the use of language came. Man started using the expression in form of sound, and then later it was developed into a language. And after that point, at some later stage, the rules of grammar was fixed for the language. The case is same with any language. Now, if we try to study a language, if we try to learn a language, it is important for us, it is necessary for us that we have knowledge of grammar of that language. Maybe grammar was an attempt to discover certain patterns in language structure, an attempt to classify words and sentences, and then to deduce some rules. What is the work of grammar? Some points are touched in this sentence. Classification of words and sentences. It is done in grammar. Why this classification is necessary? So that we can understand, we can derive the meaning from the words. We can derive the meaning by looking at the pattern, the place of the words. Then, certain patterns in the structure of language. It is necessary to recognize the patterns used in a language. It is important not only for the native speakers, it is also important for the learners who are learning a language as second language. So, the classification of patterns of language, classification of sentences, classification of words, these works were done first of all in a grammar, and then by looking at those patterns, rules were deduced. So here we cannot say that the language in practice is totally decided by the rules of grammar. Sometimes the practice in language has its effect, some changing effects in the rules of grammar also. Further, it must have been initially an attempt to describe language. But those who tried to discover rules or patterns or to classify words or structures assumed a sort of prescriptive authority and came out with normative statements. The earlier grammarians, when they studied language, they formed they formed certain rules regarding the grammar. So here they became prescriptive. Modern linguists affirm that any scientific study of language has to be descriptive, not prescriptive. Now that attitude is changed, grammar is no longer only prescriptive, it has become descriptive also. Prescriptive means something that is set as a rule and it is prescribed for the use. Descriptive is the analysis of the use, and this thing is more practical than the prescriptive approach. The question as to what grammar is still continues to remain unanswered. There is no sufficient definition of grammar. Look at a simple sentence like chess is a game of glorious tricks. The moment somebody says game glorious tricks of is a chess, we happen to remark that it is an ungrammatical or nonsensical sentence. We can say in general terms and say that it is incorrect use of language. You do not know how to use English language because chess is a game of glorious tricks is a correct sentence, and if it is written in this structure game glorious tricks of is a chess, we immediately realize that there is something wrong. The language is English, but it is not the correct use of the language. So we say that it does not make any sense, it is not a correct sentence, or it is an ungrammatical sentence. This means grammaticality has something to do with sense or meaningfulness of sentence. With the help of grammar, we grasp the meaning of a sentence. So far as structure is concerned, there may be similarity. We can say that game glorious tricks of is a sentence is the helping verb, a chess is the object. They can fulfill this classification roughly, rudely, but it does not make a sense. We can take another example. I drank a cup of coffee. I can rewrite it a cup of coffee drank me. But when I say a cup of coffee drank me, grammatically, so far as structure is concerned, it is correct. It has a subject, it has a helping verb, and it has an object, but it does not make a sense. So where is the pattern of grammar? The pattern is the same. I drank a cup of coffee and a cup of coffee drank me. Structure is same, but it does not make a sense. The second sentence, a cup of coffee drank me, does not make a sense. So again, it is meaningless. Only knowing the rules of grammar, we cannot get at the correct meaning, correct information carried by a sentence. We need certain accepted patterns of language to judge our meaning, to judge our understanding. It is grammar, therefore, that gives the user of a language the ability to distinguish between a sentence and a non sentence. That is, first of all, a cup of coffee drank me is a sentence according to the pattern of grammar. We can reach this result, we can reach this conclusion only after knowing the rules of grammar. Whether the sentence makes a sense, does not make a sense, nonsensical sentence, it is another question. That also helps. In this sense, grammar also helps, but the basic function of grammar is that we identify whether it is a correct sentence in a language or it is not a correct sentence. The definition of grammar is not still certain. Then every language has its grammar. There is a system in which words join to form meaningful sentences, use of suffixes and prefixes. This does not necessarily mean that grammar is some sort of book containing a detailed statement of any rules. It only means that anybody who speaks or writes acceptable sentences in a language knows its grammar. There is no one book, one grammar book containing all the rules of a language. We have to consider the varieties of language also. Otherwise, we can say that there may be a book in which all the rules of grammar are written. Grammar is said to operate when phonology and semantics operate between phonology and semantics. Phonology is the sound pattern of a language, its alphabet, and semantics is to derive the meaning from anything coded in that language. So, from starting to the understanding, language, grammar of a language works.